Hey guys, Fox here, and today it's time to do my Week 9 power rankings for the 2024 United Football League season. That's right, we have 2 weeks left of the regular season before the UFL's first season is over, and well, we already know all 4 playoff teams. Now yes, the 1 seed races are still technically both alive, though with the whole Ford Field issue, it really doesn't matter who wins the USFL conference, but they're still both alive. But again, we do know all 4 teams that are in the playoffs and know 4 teams that are not in the playoffs. So the power rankings really haven't changed all that much. Again, everybody, for this week especially, it seems that everywhere I've looked, everyone has the exact same power rankings, and it's not surprising when you consider teams that are on win streaks, teams playing with injuries. It's not a shock at what the power rankings are, and I bet that you've probably seen these same rankings before because, again, there really isn't much change. But we are going to also be talking about each team's best QB this season. Yes, we have played 8 weeks through the season, so it's time to look at who has been the best QB for each team. And now, while there are a couple guys who haven't played enough to really earn a spot, like Nolan Henderson's only played like a little bit, so you can't really put him as best QB, it is important to know who the best QB is for each team. So without further ado, let's get started with number 8, the Memphis Showboats. Is anyone shocked at this? I mean, yes, they kept it close against Michigan, but really when you look at it, it's one of those games where yeah, they technically kept it close, but at the end of the day, not really. Look, Bates missed a field goal, indoors, it was a huge shock, but with that, it would have been a 9-point game, which, yes, still technically a one-score game, but when you're having to make a 3-point conversion, you might as well call it a 2-score game. Look, at the end of the day, they just got outplayed, especially when you look at the stats, right? I mean, Michigan had over 100 more yards than them. They had 4 sacks to the 1 sack, and especially when those 4 sacks were averaging 9 yards lost, and 6 TFLs for 40 yards. I mean, come on, it's not even close. I mean, Michigan was the better team, and look, Memphis still holds the trifecta for being a terrible team. Worst in points allowed, not even close. They're almost 50 worse than the Renegades and Defenders. -6 in the turnover differential, that's 2 worse than any other team. And 233 yards per game in offense is the worst in the league. If you're leading all those stats at the bottom, yeah, you're the worst team in the league. You can't really argue that. This team can't defend, they can't play offense. Their only decent areas basically special teams. I mean, and if that's the only area you're even decent at, are you really that good a team? No. Number 8, Memphis, of course. Their best QB, I'm going to go with Case Cookus. This is very close. Again, if you think T. Will's been better, I'm not even going to remotely argue with you. Look, this is basically who do you prefer? Do you prefer the guy that passing-wise is worse or the guy that, doesn't fumble the ball? I mean, Cookus has fumbled 9 times and taken 20 sacks. Yes, if T. Will had been playing as much as Cookus had, he'd probably be up there in sacks and somewhat in there in fumbles. But 9 fumbles is 5 more than second place, and 20 sacks is 5 more than second place there. Yes, he is top 6 in yards, interceptions, and passing TDs, and interceptions is a bad one. He's not really high in passer rating. But again, it's one of those things where it's like, between him and T. Will, is one of them really that much better? No. I just think that Cookus has had more times where there's at least a flash of the 2022 Case Cookus there, where there's a flash or a drive where he's going downfield quickly, making quick, smart reads, being able to run the ball well. We're just not seeing enough of it. But unlike T-Will, I'm not really seeing those flashes to that 2023 Maulers team where T-Will is basically carrying his offense the same way I'm seeing flashes of Case Cookus' 2022 form. So because of that, I'm putting Cookus at the best QB for this team. But again, if you have T. Will is better, not even remotely going to argue with you. It's really close. I'm just going with Cookus. Now, number 7 is the Roughnecks. Again, they kept it close. Now, admittedly, I said this game was going to be a lot closer than people expected. Now, even I did not expect it to be a 7-point game. But I do take credit in saying that this game was going to be closer than people expected. I remember everyone saying this was going to be another 20-point blowout and all that. Look, the Gamblers, who are the Roughnecks, the Gamblers had beaten the Stallions twice. 2 of the 3 all-time losses for the Stallions team are to the Gamblers. And they did something almost what they did, this past weekend. In Week 9 of the 2022 USFL season, this undefeated Stallions team is playing against this 1-win Gamblers team. And then, of course, you had the interception heard around the spring football world. The end of the game, Jeremiah throws a pick to Micah Abernathy, and the Gamblers win the game. Almost pulled it off this year, again. They lost by 7. They had a chance to win it late. They didn't. In the end, the Stallions got the W. Look, this was a turnover battle. The Roughnecks are able to capitalize on points off turnovers to a really good degree, which was a huge help to them. If it wasn't for the turnovers, the Stallions probably do win this game pretty comfortably. But at the same time, Nolan Henderson came in and played pretty well when he was in, 9 of 14 for 97 yards. It's not great by any means, but it was better than what Sinnett did. And the big reason, of course, as well, aside from the turnovers, that Mark Thompson had his best game this year. 54 yards on the ground. Yes, he did have a 37-yard long, but he had multiple big-time key rushes. And with him, Henderson, and Pledger all having decent ground games and having one of their best performances on the ground as a team, they kept it close. They still lost. They're still the second worst team in rushing yards per game. But again, they were solid. I mean, they kept it close. I'm not going to move them up, though, because again, this is a team that, it's like if you were to see the Ravens Steelers play a game in week 15 and it, ends on a last second field goal and one team was 14-0 or you know what I mean? Like if one team was 10 wins better than the other. It's one of those rivalry games. Weird things happen. You can't really put too much into it. This is a rivalry, even though it would have been a bigger rivalry if they kept the Gamblers branding, blah, blah, blah. Point is, it's still a rivalry. It's still a team that has beaten the other team 2 of the 3 times that they've ever been beaten. So it's not shocking it was close. It was just shocking that it was this close. Again, though, Roughnecks 7. Their best QB, I'm giving it to Sinnett. I haven't seen enough of Henderson to give him the edge there, just because he hasn't played enough. Sinnett is the better of the 2 quarterbacks between him and Garantano, which isn't saying much because Garantano really is not that great, but giving it to Sinnett. Yes, Sinnett has a fumbling problem. He's fumbled 4 times, but he hasn't lost the fumble, which is a good thing. Now, while he is, higher up in interceptions than TDs at tied for 5th in picks versus tied for 7th in TDs, which is bad, he still is 6th in passer rating and 5th in yards, despite having only played, a few games. So you got to give him credit there. He's solid in that regard. Again, he's not great. He's not a guy that's going to start on basically any other team, but he is better than Garantano, and because of that, giving him this spot at 7 for the best QB of the Roughnecks and all that is what it is. Roughnecks 7, Sinnett best QB for the team. Number 6 is the Arlington Renegades. Look, this is a team that's lost many games because of miraculous comebacks. They almost pulled off one themselves. They got a touchdown late, but they failed the 2-point conversion and failed the 4th and 12. In the end, this game shouldn't have been as close as it was. They got beat by 100 yards, passing-wise mainly, and they had more penalty yardage than the Brahmas, though they were better at 3rd down percentage, but they missed the 4th down, conversion. They did hold the Brahmas to 0-3 in the red zone, but in the end, yeah, the Renegades lost. Look, the Renegades, congrats, you have the best punt net average. I mean, I had to find something positive. At the end of the day, this team is bad in basically everything, even though their offensive yards per game is actually decent, mainly because they're good passing, which we'll get to in a second. Their rush yards are still pretty poor, and they're 177 points allowed or tied for, the 3rd/2nd worst in the league, however you want to view it, at 177. And their yards per game at 319 allowed is really bad. Look, the Renegades kept it close. At the end of the day, though, they were able to shut out the Brahmas in the second half. A story you've seen before, the Brahmas under Dormade. But that first half, the defense just did nothing, even though the second half, they picked it up. They didn't do enough. At the end of the day, the Brahmas got the W. The Renegades kept it somewhat close, but the Renegades were already eliminated from the playoffs. The Brahmas are playing for the 1 seed. So give credit where it's due. The Renegades technically kept it close, even though it really wasn't. In the end, though, Brahmas win. Now, the best QB is, of course, Luis Perez. Lindsey Scott's only playing for snaps and all that, but yeah, it's Perez. Look, the amount of hate Perez is still getting is crazy. The fact is that Perez is at worst the 3rd best QB in the league, and I hate to say it like this, but there is no arguing it. Look, when you consider what he's playing with a very mid to poor offensive line, a running back room that had basically 3 weeks of playing good, and the rest of the time they were to bad. Yes, he has a great receiving core, he does. But is it better than Birmingham or St. Louis? No. Do I think if you put Perez in Birmingham or St. Louis in replace of their quarterbacks, is he better than their quarterbacks? In one of those 2 cases, I do actually believe so. Not Birmingham, but the other team, yes. I think if you put Perez where McCarron is, I think Perez does better. It's going to anger some Battlehawks fans, but first of all, just look at what Perez has done with the Renegades. He is 1st in yards, 3rd in TDs, 2nd in rating, tied for 8th in interceptions, 2nd in completion percentage, and 4th in yards per pass. So he is throwing the ball efficiently. Yes, he has some that could be picked, but so does every quarterback. He is 4th in yards per pass, despite being 2nd in completion percentage, and is 2nd in passer rating while being 3rd in TDs and 1st in yards. Look, Perez plays the way a lot of people like to think McCarron plays. A lot of people, even now, talk about McCarron being this all-time great spring football quarterback, yet he's been more of a check-down merchant and a yak merchant the past few weeks. Not really a yak merchant, but a check-down guy. He's been the captain check-down of the league. Yeah, he had a couple weeks that he did great, but most of the time he's throwing very safe passes. There's a reason why yards per, attempt, he is much lower than Perez, whereas Perez is at 7. McCarron is a decent amount lower than him. I genuinely believe if you put Perez in the Battlehawks, that Battlehawks team probably is undefeated. I'm just saying. They're undefeated if you put Perez there. I think Perez is a better quarterback than McCarron, which I know is going to anger Battlehawks fans. But again, when you consider the fact that even with the injuries, the receiving core McCarron has had, the O-line he's had, and the running back room he's had are all better than what Perez has had this season. Yet Perez is basically keeping up with or exceeding McCarron in basically every stat. And it's not even like, oh, well, the Renegades are super trailing in every game. They've gotten beat by teams coming back on them. It's not them playing from behind, right? When they lost to DC, it was a miraculous comeback. When they lost to St. Louis, that was a shootout that Perez arguably played better in. Perez is the most disrespected quarterback in spring football. He was heading into the season. He is now. The fact that people still don't recognize him as being an elite spring football quarterback is crazy. I only had him outside of elite because I only want to have 3 guys in the elite category. But before the season, I said he is a great quarterback. Most people seem to think he was a mediocre to bad quarterback. He is the best QB the Renegades have. I'd love to see Lindsey Scott play, but Perez is the better guy. He is the best QB on the Renegades, and he is, at worst, the 3rd best QB this season, but probably the 2nd best QB, only behind Adrian Martinez. Now, number 5 is DC. The Defenders coming at number 5. I mean, let's be real, they should have beaten St. Louis. This is just a fact. They should have beaten them. St. Louis is missing their starting quarterback, Ja'Cour Pearson, and Marcel Aitman. The Defenders were not missing Jordan Ta'amu. Yes, they were missing Kelvin Harmon due to his season-ending injury, but they still had their starting quarterback, and they lost this game. You know why? Because one team had 0 turnovers, the other team had 2. The Battlehawks got 6 points off the 2 turnovers by DC. Wouldn't you guess it, the Battlehawks won the game by 5 points. Look, DC is still one of the worst teams in both offense and defense, tied with the Renegades at 177 points allowed, and they're the 3rd worst team in offensive yards. But the worst is that they're 20% on 4th down conversions, and their 3rd down percentage of 34 is the worst in the league. Look, there's not much to say. The Defenders should have beaten the Battlehawks. The Battlehawks were playing super injured versus the Defenders just, decently injured. Not even really decently, just had 1 major star out. But again, DC just didn't do it. They lost a game they should have won, and this is what basically, officially put the nail in the coffin to their playoff hopes. They would have had to have the Brahmas lose out, which of course they didn't since the Brahmas won this past weekend. So yeah, DC got eliminated, but they are number 5. They still have 3 wins somehow, and they did keep this one close against a great team. And again, the Battlehawks defense is a great unit, but DC should have won this game when you consider all the injuries St. Louis had. But again, that's why I still picked St. Louis to win the game, during my game picks. I knew DC would choke this game. Reggie Barlow, like usual, did bad decisions with his timeouts. DC lost, not a shock. Their best QB is Jordan Ta'amu for the sole reason that they have nobody else that has played enough to put anyone else here. This is the one of this entire list that is clearly this guy really isn't that good this year. Look, again, there's a lot of reasons you can say it. The video that came out earlier today about the Defenders has a lot of them. Yes, they are missing a lot of guys that they didn't have from last year due to them going to the NFL and Abram Smith injury. At the end of the day, Ta'amu has been one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the league in the grand scheme of things. He is tied for 2nd in fumbles. He leads the entire league in interceptions by himself. He's 10th in completion percentage. Look, completion percentage, unlike previous years, you have to have a minimum amount of attempts to actually qualify for these stats. There's only like 12 guys that qualify, and he's 10th. 7th in yards per pass. 9th in passer rating. He is basically in the bottom 5 of every single stat that isn't just a counting stat. 3rd in yards really isn't that impressive. In fact, it isn't impressive when you're 9th in passer rating and 1st in interceptions. This isn't Luis Perez, who is top 5 in every stat that's good. This is a guy who's at the bottom of every single stat that you should be good at if you want to be a good quarterback. 7th in yards per pass, 10th in completion percentage, 9th in passer rating, 1st in interceptions. That right there tells you all you need to know about Ta'amu's season. Look, this isn't even like back in 2022 where he's disappointing. Te'amu's just been an outright bad quarterback this season. Again, you can blame injuries. You can blame guys missing. But at the end of the day, we've seen other quarterbacks playing with, again, bad rosters, or not even bad rosters, just injured rosters. Cookus and T will have been playing with basically zero offensive line. And again, it's just, there's only so much you can say without blaming the quarterback. When you are this bad in so many key stats, you're not playing good. It's why I've been saying week after week, put McClendon in. McClendon played with basically what the Defenders are this year, a team that has a lot of issues offensively, yet he was able to make it work with Vegas to a decent degree. Te'amu has been really bad. There is a legit argument that he has been a bottom 3 quarterback this season. Yes, I'm saying up there with like Garantano. That's how bad he's been this year. You can only hide from issues so much because, again, he's had 4 spring football seasons. He had the 2020 season with the Battlehawks, the 22 season with the Bandits, the 23 with the Defenders, and then, of course, this season. Wouldn't you guess, the 2 years where he had a great roster, he played good. The 2 years he didn't have a great roster, he wasn't good. So far, we have not seen him be able to carry talent to his level. We've seen Perez do it this year. We've seen McCarron, well, not even McCarron, he had a great receiving core, but we've seen other guys do it. Jamar Smith and Alex Magoo, and now Adrian Martinez are able to consistently keep playing with the Stallions and play good. Case Cookus, 2022, he was able to elevate that roster to a degree even higher than what Brian Scott was doing. At the end of the day, Te'amu's their best quarterback by proxy because he's the only guy that qualifies for this. But is he really a good quarterback this year? Hell no. Number 4, the San Antonio Brahmas. Brahmas coming at number 4. They got the W. It was close, but again, it was very similar to that Michigan game. Look, Dormady, once again, had his incredible first half. It was insane. A couple of them were, huge yaks, especially that Anthony McFarland one, but at the end of the day, he was incredible. The second half, it wasn't as bad against Michigan, but it still was not great. They got shut out in the second half. For an offense that looked so good in the first half, you expected a lot more in the second half. So again, it was another time where Dormady played significantly better in the first half than the second half. Again, he was not bad in the second half. This wasn't Michigan where Michigan, he was outright bad in the second half. He just wasn't as good as he was in the first half. So, again, Dormady is still a huge red flag on this team and is still the clear weak spot of the roster. He is a guy that, at this point, from taking over, has had 2 great first halves, 1 decent second half this week, and then the rest of the time has been bad. Again, I'm not going to give him super credit and say, oh, he's back to being his form that he was last year, because again, you played the Renegades defense. That's not that impressive. And even then, you only put up 20 points against them. That's not that impressive. You got shut out in the second half. That's really not impressive. Your third down percentage is still the second worst in the league. But again, your defense is really good. If you're a Brahmas fan, that defense is crazy. Look, is it star power-wise as good as some other teams? No. But what it is efficient. 126 points allowed is the best in the league. Now, they have a real test this next week against Birmingham. That's the test, right? St. Louis and Birmingham, for that matter, both their defense took a massive hit in points allowed because they played against each other. So we'll see. If San Antonio is able to hold them to under 25 points, that's a really good sign. But another issue, the turnover differential. Yes, they didn't turn the ball over against, Arlington. They won the turnover. They didn't even, get a turnover, though. So that shows the issue. They're -4. They don't really get a ton of turnovers. And they, when they do turn it over, again, they don't really get that many. So they're tied for second worst in the league or third worst, however you want to view it. The point is this team, their offense still leaves a lot to be desired. They are relying heavily on their rushing attack. And that's what they do. Again, Anthony McFarland having a great play, is a running back. So, yes, it's technically on the passing, but it was really a rush. It was like a screen pass for like 50 yards. Again, the Brahmas deserve to be 4th. They deserve to be in the playoffs. They're clearly the 4th best team in the league. But at the moment, there's a reason why everybody still has them at 4 and not 3 above Michigan. That's because despite them beating them a few weeks ago, Michigan has gotten better, whereas San Antonio has basically been the exact same or has even gotten worse. Their defense, great. Offense, a lot to be desired. Number 4, San Antonio. Best QB is Garbers. Not even close. This one isn't even close. Garbers is just clearly... this was an MVP candidate. This is a dude who turned to everybody's heads. And yes, there are reports that he could actually make a triumphant return. Now, how do you want to manage that? That's a big question. When is he able to return? Is he able to return to get some reps in week 10? Maybe. Would his return be exclusively in the playoff game? Maybe. But if he returns and if you're able to play him and get him some reps in like week 10, I would do that. Look, when Garbers was playing, he only played in 3 games, right? He did throw enough to qualify for the qualifying stats. He is first in completion percentage, third in passer rating, and he's still top 10 in passing yards and TDs, and he only threw 1 interception when he was playing, making him tied for 11th. And he only fumbled once. Look, this is a very efficient, solid passer. Now, his yards per pass, a lot to be desired again. His 5.5 is a really poor number, so that's a lot of checkdowns. But again, we talked about it before. A lot of those checkdowns were that week 3 game when he actually got hurt, and, we don't know for sure, but there's a good chance that he was playing with that injury, and that's why they're doing all the short passes. So, yes. But the thing is he's playing safe football like McCarron, but he's playing it to an even better degree in the sense that he is super efficient passing the ball. So, yes, if he is healthy, you get him back. He's only been sacked 3 times in the 3 games he played. That's a great stat. That's better than basically every quarterback in the league as well. If he is able to return and you legitimately at like 80%, you start him over Dormade, you start him over Hogan. He is the best QB this team has had this year. Easily Chase Garbers, best QB they've had. Now, number 3 is going to be the Michigan Panthers. Look, they once again had to play with 2 backups. Now, again, was this because Etling is fully injured, or is this because they just wanted, get him some more rest? Probably the latter, but again, if it's working, just let it go. Look, both Lewerke and Perkins played again. Perkins, once again, played better than Lewerke, but again, Lewerke didn't play all that bad. But Perkins had 55 yards in the ground and 100 through the air with less than 10 attempts. I mean, that's crazy. In the end, they beat Memphis. Yes, score-wise it was close, but eye test, watching the game, it really wasn't. Look, rushing yards per game at 124.6 yards per game is the second best in the league. Their points allowed is right with the Battlehawks at third best in the league. They're a great team. I mean, it is what it is. Look, Matt Colburn's been off the past few weeks. He's been crazy. Especially because Wes Hills is reportedly out for the season, which is a huge blow for them. But if Colburn, this is the Colburn they needed. This is Colburn playing at his elite level. 24 attempts for 93 yards. That's a legit every down type of back performance that if you can have that in the playoffs, you're going to be really, really good. So number 3 is the Michigan Panthers. Now, their best QB, I'm still giving it to Danny Etling. He doesn't qualify for all the, passer rating stats because he only played in 2 games. Technically 3, but he only started 2 and doesn't have enough attempts. I prefer him over Perkins. If you go with Perkins, I'm not against that. But Etling played as a legit starter rather than a co-player, and he was very solid in the games he played. He has 12th in yards, tied for 10th in passing TDs, tied for 11th in interceptions. His 89.3 passer rating is really solid. Yes, he's been sacked a decent amount. But again, I just think that when you look at what he's done overall, I think that when he was in, the offense was a much better machine. I think that objectively at quarterback, Perkins might be better. But in terms of running the offense, Etling was better. That's why I prefer him. But if you go with Perkins, I can buy your argument. But for me, I'm going with Etling. I think he's the best QB the team has. Number 2 is the St. Louis Battlehawks. I mean, just like last week with the Stallions, look, they're basically exactly where they've been the past couple weeks. An elite defense, an elite offense. They played against DC. Manny Wilkins got the start because of the injury to McCarron. He wasn't great, but he wasn't bad. He didn't throw any interceptions. He was great on the ground, 12 attempts for 79 yards rushing. And they won the game, Battlehawks at 2. Their best quarterback is A.J. McCarron. Again, you can't really say anyone else. Does McCarron leave some to be desired with how he's been playing the quarterback position? Yes. His 6.3 yards per attempt, which is tied for 6th, is very disappointing given the receivers he has. Is his 15 sacks taken a bit disappointing? Yes. But he still is a great quarterback. He still is at worst the 3rd best QB in the league. 2nd in yards, 1st in TDs, tied for 5th in interceptions, 4th in passer rating, and 3rd in completion percentage. Look, this is one of those classic he could be better, but he's not bad. It's just, you hate seeing how he's not utilizing the elite potential of himself and his receiving core. That's what he's not doing. Perez is doing that without an elite offensive line, without an elite running back room. McCarron has a better O-line and a better running back room than Perez, yet isn't utilizing that talent he has. Yes, I know guys have been dealing with injuries, but again, When you have Marcel Aitman, Ja'Cour Pearson, Akeem Butler, and Darius Shepard on one roster, it doesn't really matter if one or two of them are hurt. You still have two elite guys who would be, at worst, the second best receiver on basically any team in the league. He's not utilizing them to the degree he needs to. I hope he starts doing that when he gets back. We'll see, but he is still the best QB they have. Number 1, the Birmingham Stallions. They beat Houston. Adrian Martinez threw an interception that was pretty bad. But even then, he still finished with 3 TDs. He still was okay passing-wise in a completion percentage way. But again, Ricky Person had a great game. 63 yards, 15 attempts, 4.2 average. Yes, he'd have the 20-yard long, but still. Larry Roundtree got a few carries in, was great himself. Is what it is. Stallions number 1, not much to say. Best QB, Adrian Martinez. Again, literally no argument for this. Adrian Martinez, with Bates missing this last field goal, it basically eliminates any argument, which means that Martinez is probably going to be the MVP of the league. Look, he's first in rushing yards. He hasn't even played every game as the starter, and he's leading the league in rushing yards. Passing-wise, 4th in yards, 2nd in TDs, tied for 8th in interceptions, 1st in yards per pass, 1st in passer rating, 7th in completion percentage. This guy has been crazy. He is clearly the best QB in the league. While he leaves a teeny bit desired through his arm, and I only mean that in completion percentage way, his rushing ability is just so scary and dynamic that it makes him the best QB in the league just by that. When you are, at worst, like the 3rd best passer in the league, but you add that with the best ground game in the league, you're the best QB in the league, not even close. So that'll do it. This has been ZomFox. Again, Power Rankings didn't change for the 3rd week in a row. I didn't overreact last week, which is why I didn't change last week, and it ended up aging well. Maybe it'll change next week, but we'll see. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell notification to be notified as soon as I upload any videos, as I upload at least 4 videos a week as well as 1 weekly short. And I'm planning on doing at least 1 live stream for every week of the season until the championship game, which I'll be at live. And again, if you've been a fan here for a while, think about becoming a community member for as low as 99 cents a month. I have an exclusive monthly video as well as many other perks. And as always, have a great night.